Tobias Harris is a real boy.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball. Today we're going to be looking back at the 6 games from Thursday and previewing the 7 games for Friday. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
I'm sure you noticed new intro music for today's podcast. Shout out to Kuka, who made that an intro song for me, and you can check out all of his music either in the podcast notes, link to his Spotify there, or the YouTube description, so go and check out all of his music as well. So it's Kuka, and if you're looking up to spell that, it's KVKA. Again, the link to his music is in the show notes and in the YouTube description, so go check out that music as well. It's another good way of helping to support the podcast, is supporting the people who do support this show. Let's talk about what did happen in the NBA across Thursday. Quite a bit of information for us to get to, and let's start where we always do on these shows.
Monstrous Line of the Night.
The monstrous line of the night. Who else is it going to be? It's James Harden of the Houston Rockets, who had been a little bit quiet lately. Not so much here. 58 points with 8 triples. 7 rebounds, 10 assists, 4 steals and a block, 16 of 32 from the field, and a perfect 18 of 18 from the free throw line. That is just a huge boost in that category. He had Z scores of over 4 in 4 separate categories for today. He remains the number 1 player. He had dropped down to number 2. Bradley Beal had jumped up to number 1 over that last bit of time. His efficiency had dropped off. His free throw attempt rate had dropped off a little bit as well over the last month or so, but a big performance once more from Jim Harden, and again, not that he dropped off from number 1 overall, but just reasserting himself there with a huge performance, averaging an astonishing 36.5 points, 6.5 boards, 7.5 assists, 2.2 steals, and 0.7 blocks per game. By far the number 1 player in fantasy basketball for this season.
Waiver wire line of the night.
The waiver wire line of the night is Corey Joseph of the Indiana Pacers. With Tyreke Evans sidelined again, we saw Joseph get extra minutes, 29 minutes in fact. He had 8 points with 5 rebounds and 12 assists. He had a steal and 2 blocks. He hit 2 triples and he was efficient from the field. We saw, though, in those games where Evans was playing, Joseph was barely playing. In fact, before these last 2 games where he's played 32 and 29 minutes, he played 21, 20, 23, 20, 20 in those minutes since Wes Matthews signed with the team, and his value had dropped off. But these last 2 games, 3 steals, 3 blocks combined, 16 assists, 9 rebounds, and 3 triples. So a lot of value from Corey Joseph there, but we're looking at him really as just a stream type option while Tyreke is sidelined, and again, I don't think that's going to be for very long, and a deeper league sort of guy who's going to be a low 20s in minutes guy, not a high 20s as he was, or as he has been for these last couple of games. The deep leaguer of the night is Kyle Korver of the Utah Jazz. Korver has these sort of games semi-regularly. 22 minutes for 22 points with 6 threes, 3 rebounds, 2 assists and a steal, 8 of 15 from the field for Korver. Realistically, he is just a 3-point streamer and a deep league 3-point streamer at best. There are plenty of other guys that you can add off the waiver wire. The last time he had more than 2 triples in a game was back on the 25th of January, where he knocked in 4 against the Timberwolves. I think this might be the most threes he's hit in a game all season, at least as a member of the Jazz. He did hit 6 in his last game as a member of the Cavs against the Timberwolves, where he had an identical 22 points in that game. So realistically, just a deep league stream option is Kyle Korver, and he showed that in today's game. Let's move on to the next one.
Young Gun of the Night.
The young gun of the night is Benny Simmons of the Philadelphia 76ers in a big win for them over the Oklahoma City Thunder. Simmons played 41 minutes and had a triple-double, 11, 13, and 11, 2 steals and 2 blocks. He was 5 of 9 from the field and 1 of 4 from the free throw line. He is the 40th ranked player this season. Of course, in a punt free throw percentage build, he's much higher. Punt threes, he's higher again, probably hovering in that second round range in that sort of a scenario. Really high field goal percentage as a point guard, obviously. Steals and blocks and assists and rebounds and scoring. It's all pretty solid from Simmons and those other areas, which are clear deficiencies in his game. Do hold him back. I don't think that we're ever going to get big amount of threes from Simmons. I don't think he's ever going to become a good free throw shooter, although over the last month he has improved that up to 61%. That's still not good, but it's at least lessening the impact he has on you in that category. And tonight wasn't a good night there, going just 1 of 4 from the free throw line. So Simmons is your young gun of the night for Thursday. The dud of the night is Derrick Rose of the Minnesota Timberwolves. It was not a good night for Rose or the Timberwolves as they lost to the Pacers. Rose played 24 minutes for 10 points. He had 0 assists, 1 rebound, didn't hit a 3 and had a block. He was 5 of 10 from the field, but didn't get to the line either. Quite an empty performance. And over the last month or so, he has not been that same guy he was to begin this season. In fact, over the last 2 months, Derrick Rose is the 159th ranked player. The points are still nice from Rose, consider him like an Andrew Wiggins type of a guy. 17 points per game, that's okay. 4 assists, that's okay. Free throws, 89%, pretty solid, but a distinct lack of rebounds, no threes, no steals, no blocks. He really is fitting into certain builds and certain builds only, not being a well-rounded contributor. And I don't think we should be looking at him as a 100% must-roster 12-team league guy. Again, the 17 and 4 is nice. The 89% on 4 attempts is strong, and they can really help your team. But it also might be superfluous to your squad, or it might be a category where you've got really no hope of competing in it, and his overall value isn't high enough to consider Rose a must-roster or must-hold guy for the rest of the season. But he's still going to have value in a lot of 12-team leagues, rostered currently in 74% of leagues across Yahoo. The plus-minus GOAT of the night, Abdul Nadir, was a plus 163.3 for the Thunder with Paul George out, while the worst net rating went to Shawnee Livingston, a negative 108.7. Livingston did not register a single stat during his time on the court. Injury news, Marvin Bagley, MRI came back. He's going to be reevaluated in 5 to 7 days with a knee sprain. It does appear to be that he's avoided significant injury. I think 7 days reevaluation doesn't mean he's back in 7 days. I would think he's out longer than that. I would guess 2, maybe 3 weeks is what we're looking at with Bagley. If you're in the playoffs, you might need to drop him. It means those people getting super hyped about someone like Harry Giles or even Willie Cauley-Stein. It does put a limit on their overall long-term value, but it's probably best case scenario in terms of Bagley. And if you aren't in the playoffs, or your players haven't started but you're comfortably in, let's just hold and wait to see what happens when that reevaluation occurs. But if he's not going to play at all in the first week of your playoffs is next week, then it is pretty tough to hold him in that sort of a scenario as a guy that even when he comes back, they'll be extra cautious. We saw how cautious they were when he returned from his bone bruise earlier in the season, which kept him out for multiple weeks, about a month from memory. He was out with that bone bruise. I probably should just quickly double check that. It wasn't a month. Where am I with my dates on this bone bruise for Marvin Bagley? I'll bring that up as I continue talking. But he is an interesting option. But it does, again, it limits the overall upside of guys like Giles and Cauley-Stein just because their value may not be long term enough to consider them must roster. And I already gave my thoughts and opinions on the Giles situation, and not thinking that he was going to step into a significantly 30-minute a night role, which it would seem unlikely. Bagley's bone bruise cost him about 3 weeks earlier in the season, and he came back and didn't hit 30 minutes for another 2 weeks after he returned. So yeah, that does give you, I guess, a bit of pause for concern, and I don't think we should be looking at this as a 1 week injury for Bagley. Devin Booker's questionable for Friday with a toe injury. We know how many injuries he's had. I would guess that he sits there. That's going to give some stream value to someone like Josh Jackson and McCall Bridges. Mario Hezonja's got a leg contusion. He's out for the upcoming road trip. He's not playing anyway, so not much to look at there. Eric Gordon missed today with knee soreness. That's always a worry when Gordon has to deal with knee issues. Torian Prince is going to play Friday, but the Sunday-Monday games he could be out of due to the birth of his second child, so be aware of that. That might give you some interesting stream ability for someone like Kent Bazemore or DeAndre Bembry, while Lance Stevenson will also miss Friday's game with that toe injury that he suffered on Wednesday. Thankfully, that means he'll be out of the rotation, not because Luke Walton decided it was a good idea, which it would be, but because he is forced out due to that injury. Let's look at these games now across the league and see what happened on Thursday in the NBA. The first game we look at, the Golden State Warriors, they lose another one. That's 2 consecutive losses for the Warriors. The Magic win 103-96. Kevin Durant rested in this one, as did Andre Iguodala, but DeMarcus Cousins returned 32 minutes for Boogie, 21 and 11 with a steal and a block. These are really, really strong numbers, and that's 30-plus minutes for Boogie in 2 consecutive games. He's not necessarily going to be a 30-plus minute a night guy every night, but it does appear that's the way it's trending. Well, Steph had 33, 8, and 6. Jordan Bell once again outplaying Kevon Looney, 14 minutes for Bell, 6 and 8, while Looney played 8 minutes. I would think that Bell is going to take a fair chunk of Looney's minutes, and that does give him some very deep league appeal. With Durant out, Alfonso McKinney started 4-3-3 with 2 steals in his 24 minutes, but overall not a good performance from the Warriors. For the Magic, Aaron Gordon went big, 22 and 15, while Nikola Vucevic had 12, 13 and 6, and blocked 3 shots. He just couldn't get his shots to fall, though, 4 of 15 from the field. Isaiah Briscoe returned from his concussion, grabbed 9 rebounds, had a block. I like his value in deeper formats as that backup point guard. Well, Johnny Isaac, not his best game, but 12 and 4 with a block on an off night shows just how far he has come. 2 months ago, that would have been a really strong game from Isaac. Terry Ross also unsurprisingly bounced back. Didn't shoot well, 16 points on 14 shots, but he had 16 points, he had 4 triples, and he had 5 assists, and he does remain a 12-team league guy in my opinion. The next game that we take a look at, the Minnesota Timberwolves losing to the Pacers 122-115. Karl Anthony Towns has been a monster this season, 42 and 17 with 3 triples and 4 assists. He was 15 of 29 from the field, and again, the poor free throws costing his overall value. 9 of 13 from the line for 69%.
Giggity!
If he was at his usual 80+% there, then that line would have been not quite challenging James Harden, but not too far away. Dario Saric, just the 21 minutes. He's not good, and he is not a 12-team league. But he's not good enough to be a 12-team league guy. You can move on there. Well, Jeff Teague.
My name is Jeff.
He did return 13, 6, and 5, a steal and a block. Yeah, so many people, you do tend to get overreactions from any injuries. Oh, it's a shutdown happening for Teague. He missed 2 games with knee soreness, and he might get injured again. He's been injured plenty of times this season, but he was back here, and of course that limited Tyus Jones. 2, 3, and 3 in 18 minutes, so that value for Jones is probably cooked. Well, Taj Gibson had a very strong night as the backup center, 12 and 9, 2 steals and a block, but realistically, he is just a deeper guy. We talked about Derrick Rose already. Andy Wiggins had 11 and 6, and it was not a good Wiggins night. For the Pacers, Bojan Bogdanovic was fantastic. Must roster guy across all 12-team leagues pretty clearly. 37, 7, and 4 with 4 triples, a 40% usage, and a true shooting of 71%. Just masterful stuff from him, while Thad Young bounced back from a poor performance on Wednesday for 15, 5, and 5 with 3 steals. Miles Turner got into foul trouble. He was also not good offensively. 3 points on 4 shots with only 1 rebound, but he saved you in the blocks category. 6 blocks is really, really strong in those 23 minutes. Well, Dazza Collison couldn't hit a shot at all, 1 of 9. That's 2 games in a row where he couldn't shoot, but at least contributed 7 rebounds, 9 assists, a steal, and a block, and we just have to hold on to him. Kylo Quinn got into some foul trouble, so he couldn't benefit from Turner's foul trouble as well, but that meant TJ Leaf stepped up. 18 points in 22 minutes for Leafy. I'd imagine Sabonis is going to miss some extra time here, a couple more games with this ankle, so Leaf for the deeper leagues, he's playing a little bit better. He's scoring at a decent enough rate. He had a 1-1 here, not really challenging the shallow formats, but in the deeper formats, there's something there for TJ, while Wes Matthews hit another 3 triples, and that's where his value is lying in his ability to be streamed in for that 3-point category. Let's move on to the next one. It's the Cavs. They came home late to beat the Knicks 125-118. Chetty Osman, 21, 7, and 5. 3 threes, a steal, 2 blocks, 7 of 10 shooting. on a massive hot streak at the moment before and after his injury. He should be rostered in all 12-team leagues at this point. Him and Kevin Love working well together. Love started slowly but ended with 26 and 8. I don't believe he scored at all in the first quarter. 11 of 11 from the line as well, while Geordie Clarkson has his minutes bumped back up to 29 and had 22 points. The Padawan Colin Sexton also had 22 points, only 3 assists and a lack of defensive numbers. He's a better suited player to points leagues. He can still be maybe a 14-team category guy. While Larry Nance, you look at the minutes and you go Larry Drew, and that's true to an extent, but he did foul out in those 19 minutes. 6-2-2 with a steal, but it's been a steady decline from Nance with Love coming back, and then of course Tristan Thompson could come back any time, and you think that's going to put somewhat of a dip in Nance's numbers. Sometimes you have to make the hard decisions at this point in the season, and while we love what Nance does when he plays 30 a night, my confidence in him getting there is not high at all. For the Knicks, Mitchie Robinson, of course, he didn't start, but played 28 minutes and had 12 and 7 with a steal and 2 blocks on a perfect 5 of 5 shooting. He did foul out, but he got pretty much all those fouls in the final 30 seconds of the game, so nothing to really worry about there. I just don't know why Fizdale refuses to start him, but at least he's playing him those minutes. Smith had a nice game, but only 29 minutes remains the concern, while Moutier played 22. 16, 2 and 8 for Smitty, while Moutier had 10, 1 and 6, and I think we can leave Moutier just for the moderate to deeper formats. The Fort, Kevin Knox, had some foul trouble. He also had some shitfulness trouble, 8 and 6 in those 22 minutes, while Noah Vonleh started again, I don't know what for. 16 and 10, that's strong from Vonleh, but we're not really interested. The guy we want to look at here is Henry Allenson, who had 2 strong games in a row. Is this going to be Luke Cornett? Will Allenson start next game and then be out of the rotation in a week's time? That's a possibility, because Cornett had literally started and played 30 plus minutes, and now he is out of the rotation. Allenson had 13 and 5 with 3 triples. A name to watch, especially for your 18 team leagues. You might want to have a look at Allenson, while the Damo Dotson train, 9, 3 and 6. He struggled, while Trier is the guy that stepped up, 22 and 4 in 32 minutes. But we know those two guys are just going to go back and forward in alternating value, and it's hard to see them maintaining it on a consistent basis. Next up, we go to the Philadelphia 76ers in that big win over the Thunder, 108-104. Toby Harris, really, really strong from him. 32 with 5 triples, a steal, a block, 58% shooting. I still maintain that he is a sell-high guy with Embiid out. He's seeing his usage spike. He's being really efficient, but there will be somewhat of a dip when Joel returns. And a lot of people looking at this guy, look, his numbers in Philadelphia are the same as his numbers in LA, and that's not quite the case, because again, we're dealing with a situation without Embiid. You're not dropping him, of course, but if you can sell him from anyone, to anyone for a top 30, top 25 guy, then I think you have to do that. Jimmy Butler, General Soreness, also had 28 and 8, while Jonah Bolden didn't have foul trouble, but still only 20 minutes. 14 points with 2 triples. His value, even in deeper leagues, will be pretty limited once Embiid is back. We also had 14 minutes of Amir Johnson. For the Thunder, Westbrook looked like he did tweak his leg at one point in this game, but ended up with 38 minutes, 23, 11, and 11 with a 1-1 and disastrous percentages, as is the norm. They started Markieff Morris in place of Paul George, sliding Jeremy Grant down to small forward. Jeremy Grant had 23 and 6, another big game, while Morris had 17 and 4 in his 19 minutes. So the minutes didn't change all that much for Markieff here, and I don't imagine that Paul George's injury is a long-term one, so Morris is just still that deeper league guy. Schroeder had 14 and 7. He also stepped up with George out despite the efficiency problems, while Steven Adams, 32 minutes, 11 and 14 for Steve-O. Abdul Nadir also some extra minutes, 17 minutes for him with Paul George sidelined. The Miami Heat and the Houston Rockets. The Heat 118, the Rockets 121. Goran Dragic with his second consecutive big game. High usage again, 28%. Another 8 free throw attempts, which he hit all of them. 21, 5 and 5 with 3 threes. I haven't been massively high on Dragic because before his injury, he wasn't playing very well. And he struggled a little bit last season. These last 2 games are definitely really high value performances. If you want to add him, I'd do it and I'd try and trade him if anyone wants to believe he can be a top 60 sort of a guy. I don't. There's been a few of these things in these last couple of games which don't feel real as an ongoing performance scenario. Kelly Olynyk did leave the game with an ankle issue but returned. 21 points in 33 minutes, really thriving with Jimmy Johnson out, while Bam Adebayo struggled his way to 10, 3 and 5 with 2 blocks. I don't know what the time frame is on Johnson and Whiteside returning. Dion Waiters, probably better streaming his spot, 11, 2 and 4, while Winslow had 19, 7 and 8 with some poor free throw shooting, 2 of 4 from the line. But otherwise, a pretty strong night from Justice. For the Rockets, Capella wasn't quite as good as last game. 6 and 11 with a steal and 2 blocks. There was no Ken Fareed, there was no Iman Shumpert, and no Eric Gordon. So the Comet Gary Clark started. Remember that bloke? 32 minutes, probably his best game of his career. 14 points with 3 threes. Do not buy too much into that. While Chris Paul played 34 minutes in a back-to-back, 14, 6, and 4. PJ Tucker was ejected in this one as well, while Austin Rivers got 31 minutes due to the absence of both Shumpert and Gordon. The last game of the day was the Utah Jazz and the Denver Nuggets. Joe Ingles, he's been really, really strong since the All-Star break. Needs to be rostered in all leagues. 15, 4, and 10 with 2 steals. Korver we talked about, while Derek Favors played 30 minutes, 15 and 11. Jay Crowder was dealing with a bit of a bum ankle in this one, and that allowed Favors to get some more playing time. The Don Mitchell, he was pretty good.
He's good.
24, 8, and 5 for Don in his 36 minutes with 4 triples, while Gobert had 16 and 8 with 4 blocks. The free throws really hurt Gobert. 6 of 11 from the line, but he did a fantastic job in limiting what Jokic could do. Nick ended up with 16, 3, 13, and 7, not anywhere near his best, and Gobert did provide problems. Will Barton with another strong game. Ever since I said maybe he's just not that good, he's had 2 really big games. 38 minutes, 21 and 13 with a steal and 2 blocks. That's obviously strong enough to be useful, while Mason Plumlee filled it up 11, 9, and 6. Isaiah Thomas really, really struggling. He's rostered in 43% of leagues. Surely there's nobody listening to this who's in a 12-team format who has Isaiah. If you do, move on. While Monty Morris also struggled, and Gaz Harris, unfortunately for Gaza, yeah, it doesn't feel like it's happening. He did take 10 shots, only hit 3 of them, 8 and 4 with 4 assists for Gaza, but still, the 23 minutes with Malik Beasley continuing to start. Harris is going to start again this season. I've got no doubt about that. But with how he is playing, the slowness they're going with his minutes, I'm just not sure that he is a must-hold guy, especially in do-or-die playoff-type formats. Yeah, if you're in a luxurious type scenario where you can hold him for 2 weeks' time because you're locked into the playoffs, you do it. But hard decisions might have to be made with Gaz Harris as we move forward here. That'll wrap it up for all the action from Thursday. Let's flick this over now and look at the DFS portion of the day for Friday's DFS action. But we'll start, of course, by looking at the perfect lineups. We'll start with DraftKings: Harden, Corey Joseph, Kyle Korver, Chetty Osman, Karl Anthony Towns, Bojan Bogdanovic, Aaron Gordon, and Will Barton for a total of $432, and that cost $50,000. And on FanDuel, Joseph, Dragic, Jim Harden, Korver, Bogdanovic, Barton, Aaron Gordon, Toby Harrison, Karl Anthony Towns for a total of $426.8, and that cost $59,900. Alright guys, let's look at these games for Friday. A really light Friday in the NBA, just the 7 games on. We're going to be focusing mainly on FanDuel pricing for today. The first game we take a look at is the Hawks taking on the Chicago Bulls in Atlanta. The Hawks are 3.5 point favorites. I was looking at a different game then completely. 230.5 is the total. Both these teams coming off big wins in their last game. The Hawks beating the Wolves in that overtime game, and the Bulls knocking off the Grizzlies. Injury-wise, we're pretty good in this one. The artist formerly known as Taurean Prince will play, but he will likely miss the Hawks back-to-back. I think Sunday, Monday it is, as he awaits the birth of his child. I think his second child, so congratulations to you formally. At point guard, Chris Dunn is at $6,000. He returned after missing 1 game with a migraine, had 29 points in 31 minutes, and this is a very, very positive matchup for Dunn, so I do like him. He has struggled, no doubt about that. But that nice 29-pointer in a game against the Grizzlies is a pretty good base at a $6,000 salary to at least consider Dunn here. Trae Young, on the other hand, is up to $8,800. Look, he's cranking out the big numbers, no doubt about that. He had 58 in that overtime game against the Wolves, averaging 45 across his last 5. That salary's pretty high. Chris Dunn can be a pretty solid, a very good defender at that point guard position, so this might lean us just a fade off of Young here. Archer Jacquinot is a pretty strong fade regardless. Kevin Huerter's at $4,200. I like some upside value here for Huerter. He did have 20 points in 30 minutes last game, and it was far from a good one. The 30 minutes are the encouraging thing, and the 4,200 is nice for Huerter, so I do like him, while Levine at 8,300. I like what Levine's doing. I'd take him over Trae because I'm saving $500, and he has been as rock solid and consistent as what Trae Young's been. Bazemore won't be as terrible as last game, but he's nowhere near worth 5,200. While Big Wayne Selden, I don't think we need to get too interested in him, although he is averaging 21 over the last 3 at under 4,000, but one of those games was without Otto Porter. As for Prince, 4,800, he's got a history of tearing apart the Bulls, averaging 39 the last 3 times. Of course, that was without Otto Porter having to guard him, but he's always worth a GPP guy, but no trust in cash. While Porter himself, 7,200, like what he's doing, like the matchup. Really strong play, I think, for cash and for tournaments. Bembry was massive for the Hawks against the Wolves, but prior to that, he had struggled a bit. His salary's risen probably a little bit too far now, 4,500, and I don't have the trust that he is going to do what he did last game. While at power forward, I love the Baptists here. John Collins, 7,700. Strong floor play with some upside too, while Lowry Markkinen at 9,000. We love what Lowry's been doing. I think 9,000 is probably a little bit too high to have an absolute lock in cash, but he's not misplaced there. The matchup suits him. It's all going to come down to whether the shots go in, and last game they didn't, and that limited his production. At centre, the Undertaker, Dwayne Dedmon, fouled out last game, but still made value, 27 points in 19 minutes. Really hard to go past him in a strong matchup, while Robin Lopez also had a struggle last game, but still 22 points is not a bad return. I think both of these centres have pretty solid enough cash value. Their backups, Alex Len and Chris Felicio, are barely playing. On DraftKings, I like Herder at 3,500. That's a great price. Bembry as well, minimum salary. That's the difference. At 4,500 on FanDuel for Bembry takes me away from him. Minimum salary for DeAndre on DraftKings is absolutely worth it. I love the 7,000 for John Collins. 45 for Taurean Prince is that GPP guy. And Trae Young at 81 is a much more appealing option on DraftKings versus FanDuel. I like Levine there and Dunn at 55. There's a lot of value in this game across both sites, in my opinion. Next up, we've got the Charlotte Hornets and the Brooklyn Nets. Some good opportunities here for some value as well. The Nets are 3.5 point favourites. The total 228. Spencer Dinwiddie returns to action for the Brooklyn Nets. He will be in this game. That could muck things up in that backcourt, so a little bit of caution needed there. At point guard, 9,300, Kemba Walker, who had 55 last game. He averages 47 against the Nets. I think they had that triple overtime game last time these two teams met. Kemba at 93 is probably more of a tournament guy. I'm not totally in on his level of consistency. Well, Dinwiddie at 6,300, I won't be going with him in his first game back. But I also think that it does put a little bit of doubt on guys like D'Angelo Russell and Karis LeVert as to how they run those minutes. Even Alan Crabb and Smokin' Joe Harris also, the minutes could be a little bit muted there. LeVert will have basically no one rostering him, and at 6,300 that makes complete sense. While Jeremy Lamb has thrived the last 2 games as a shooting guard. 48 points last game. 6,400 is maybe a little bit high for Lamb coming off the bench, but he's not a terrible GPP guy. While Russell, as I mentioned, 9,300. We love what D'Angelo's doing, but does he lose a couple of minutes here to Dinwiddie? He's more likely to lose him to Dinwiddie than he is to Shabazz Napier, so I think that puts him squarely in the GPP camp. At small forward, Smokin' Joe Harris, not interested in him. Damari Carroll, probably not either. Well, Nick Batum has been putting up massive numbers, and his salary has risen accordingly. 6,100 for Batum. His numbers recently have been blowing that out of the water, so he's not a terrible one to look at. In fact, I think he's not a bad play here at all. At power forward, Ed Davis is not going to do it for me. Marvin Williams, the same. Rowdy Rodions, Kuruks as well. But it's the centers I'm really interested in. We know that centers against the Nets and centers against the Hornets put up big numbers. So Cody Zeller at 66 and Jarrett Allen at 67. They might seem highly priced, but the fact that they're going up against each other, there is an opportunity for both of them to put up some pretty good numbers. I'm not looking at them as massively high upside type players, but they are guys who do have some cash value at the center position. Over on DraftKings, Allen again, 5,300. Lamb at 53, great value there. Zeller at 58. Miles Bridges, who I don't really like on FanDuel, but the 3,200 on DraftKings gives him some tournament value. Kemba at 82 also comes in at a much better play on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel. 8,500 for D'Angelo, which would be an absolute smash lock if Dinwiddie wasn't back. It means he still has some cash value on DraftKings, but probably not as secure as he was before the Dinwiddie return. Next up, the Portland Trail Blazers and the Raptors. The Blazers just got a win in Boston. Now they travel to Toronto. The Raptors are 5-point favourites here. The total 227.5. We know that Enes Kanter is out due to those visa issues. At point guard, Jeremy Lin's at 4,200. I don't see really any value in that. Lillard and Lowry is where we really want to focus. 9,400 for Lillard. 7,700 for Lowry. Now, Lowry has the easier matchup going up against Lillard. But he's obviously not as large a producer. I would feel much more comfortable about using Lowry at that 77 than I would with Lillard at 9,400. At shooting guard, Dan Green, not really seeing much with him. McCollum at 6,900, in fact, 6,900.
Giggity!
He's always, to me, at this point, just a tournament guy. The fun guy, Kawhi Leonard.
I'm a fun guy.
He is at 9,500. We're looking at a 45-pointer here, I think, for Kawhi. Really interested in him. While Flamin' Mo Harkless at 53, putting up big numbers, averaging 34 over the last 3. Is he worth looking at? I think he's, and I don't have full trust in his consistency or his floor. I think there is some good upside there for him, but not a real cash guy. Layman, Hood, Powell, not much with those players. At power forward, Siakam's at 7,500. Well, at the moment, he's just an absolute cash lock. It doesn't even matter who is playing or who isn't. He's just putting up those numbers. While the Chief, Al-Farouq Aminu,
Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit.
he's at 5,200 and he is a tournament option. We don't know what's going to happen at center for the Raptors with Serge Ibaka and Marcus Gasol. So a little bit hard to use those guys. 6,000 for Ibaka is a pretty strong fade. And then you've got Gasol at 5,800. I'd be more interested in using Mark at that salary.
Oh, hi, Mark.
As a tournament guy, not really as a cash player. Well, Nurkic at 8,000 has been a little bit under his recent, or that level of production of late. With the absence of Kanter, maybe they can go to Nurkic a little bit more, but I don't really think Kanter's presence was limiting Nurkic's minutes. So more of a tournament guy than anything. Well, Zach Collins would look to fill in for Kanter's missing minutes. On DraftKings, you love Mo Harkless at 38. That's strong. The same for Gasol at 52. Lillard a lot better there, 8,400, and Kawhi at 88. Value in both of those guys. Siakam at 7,000 also is a really strong play over on DraftKings. Next up, we've got the Washington Wizards and the Boston Celtics. The Celtics 9.5-point favourites. The total is big, 231.5. Bradley Beal, he's getting 40 minutes a night again. If they're going to stay competitive, he's probably going to need that many again here. Daniel Tice is questionable for Boston, while Terry Rozier is probable, and Aaron Baines is out. Kyrie is putting up massive numbers, but he's at 9,900. It's pretty big of a price, but I like the matchup for Kyrie. He should be at least pushing towards 50 here. Really like Kyrie at that spot. Satoransky at 54. Not much upside. Cash value is okay. I just hate the matchup, so not someone I'm really interested in. Marcus Smart really played well in that last game against the Blazers. At 5,400, he had 33 points. I'm not so sure that there's much value in him here. Jaylen Brown not happening, while Brad Beal at 9,900, same as Kyrie, and he should be close to getting us 50 points with the way that he is playing. So I do like Beal as a pretty strong option here. At small forward, Hayward is a pretty good fade. Jabari and Jeff Green.
My name is Jeff.
I don't really see the appeal of those guys. Parker played well, but his pattern has been good game, shit game, shit game, good game, shit game, shit game. So that's generally been his standard. At power forward, Marcus Morris at 4,900 does a really good job against the Wizards in general, but maybe some of that was to do with his brother being there. 32 average the last 3 times against Washington. Of course, Markieff is no longer around. Really just a tournament look for Marcus. Tatum at 6,400 is struggling. Not interested in him, while Punch Bob Shiploke at 6,700 has been underwhelming, and Thomas Bryant has been outplaying him off the bench. Speaking of Bryant, 4,400. Absolutely worth a tournament look. I don't have any trust in his ability or his floor ability or the ability of Scott Brooks to play him minutes, but with how he's been going at the moment, I think we've got to look at it, although Al Horford's a pretty tough matchup. And then Horford himself at 7,700. I think that's probably just a little bit too high, although going up against Portis' non-existent defense, this could be a 50-point Horford game, so I would consider him at least a tournament option. On DraftKings, Horford again at 64, way more appealing. Hayward at 4,100's got some GPP value. Kyrie at 89, I like quite a bit. And Marcus Morris again, there's some decent GPP value. Love Beal also at 8,700. The New Orleans Pelicans and the Phoenix Suns. The Pelicans are 4.5-point favorites. The total 237. We know that Anthony Davis is going to miss either Friday or Saturday in this back-to-back. We just don't know which one of those games at this point. Look, there's a chance that they sit him out in this one, but I would imagine that they think that they would win this one regardless of Davis's status, so they'd play him and then maybe sit him in the next game and hope they get a loss for lottery ball purposes. So we've still got to watch and see what happens there. The other news in Phoenix is Devin Booker is questionable with that toe issue. This bloke has been injured that many times this season that I would expect that he does not play here. If he is out, you look for value boost for Bridges, for Joshy Jackson especially, Tyler Johnson, Kelly Oubre, all those guys get pretty decent bumps. At point guard, Lord Alfred Payton against his former team, he's at 6,400. He's been giving us mid-30s in numbers at the moment, and I think that's worth looking at, while Tyler Johnson is up to 5,700, and with how he is playing also, I think he is a pretty strong play, especially if Booker sits. Frankie Jackson was big last game, but I don't really have much trust in that being something that he can continue doing. At shooting guard, Devin Booker, 8,600, really tough to rely on him. Well, Drew Holiday, so much for a minutes limit. He is giving us 47 a game over the last 5 in 33 minutes. I really love this matchup for Drew. He should be looking at 40 plus unless the minutes limit comes out of nowhere and is a factor. Oubre at 73 is probably a little bit high. If Booker is out, I think that it does bring him into tournament value. Same with McCall Bridges at 49. And then Kenrick Williams has been pretty shitful at 5,200. I'll leave him alone, I believe. At power forward, Rashawn Holmes at 4,000. No, thank you. Joshy Jackson, I love Jackson if Booker is out at 55. If Booker plays, I think that's pretty tough to rely upon Josh at that sort of a salary. While Julius Randle also absolutely crushing at the moment, averaging 46 over the last 3. And the opportunity could be big again for Julius. If Davis does sit, I wouldn't be going massively over on Jahlil Okafor. He'd be a GPP guy because he's been absolutely dreadful. Well, Czech Diallo would really be the guy I'd look for at 4,300. As for Tone Davis, he's down to 7,600, and that's getting to be the right price for Davis. He's giving us 35, 36 a night over the last 3 in 20 minutes, and at 7,600, it's not far off. It's just a little bit hard to have any reliability with Davis at this point. I do like DeAndre Ayton at 7,600. I think he's got a relatively solid floor and an ability maybe to get some extra usage. And the Pelicans have been giving up big numbers to opposition centers over the last period of time. So I think DeAndre Ayton is an option here. On DraftKings, Ayton again in play. Randall looks pretty good. And then the Oubre-Jackson combination if Booker sits. Tyler Johnson also at 5,000. And Drew Holiday, love him at 7,900. That's a ton of value for Drew Holiday. Next up, the Clippers and the Kings. The Kings 2.5 point favourites. The total 240 here. These guys battling for that playoff spot coming up. Let's look at the point guards. We know that Marvin Bagley is out, of course, here. At point guard, De'Aaron Fox at 8,000. Really solid floor cash option with tournament value as well. Landry Shamet's not happening for me. Gilgeous Alexander, no. While Pat Beverly, the salary is all the way up to 5,900. Now, he is putting together 30-point nights relatively consistently. It is a real positive matchup for Bev. I'm not so sure that it's a cash situation, but I think he's got some tournament value, but clearly not the number one guy that I'd be looking at. Bogdan Bogdanovic at 6,400. He had 58 points in 43 minutes last game. Really looking for him to take on a lot of the Bagley role, while 7,300 for Budrick Hield, also some strong value there. Lou Williams at 76. I'd rather Hield over Williams and save that $300. For the small forwards, the pencil Harrison Barnes at 56. He had a nice 36-point game on the back of a career high in rebounding, but at 5,600, I think there is some tournament value with Bagley out, while the Rooster at 68 has been pretty disappointing since Tobias Harris left. Not super interested in him here. At power forward, Giles is at 4,800. That is a huge bump for Gilesy, but this is a very, very positive matchup. We know that centers against the Clippers do go off, and Giles had 30 points in 17 minutes. Of course, that came on high usage and very high field goal percentage, two things which may not necessarily carry over for Giles. I would only look at him as a GPP guy. Montrezl Harrell at 6,900.
Giggity!
He's averaging 41 the last 3 times against the Kings. I think this is an opportunity to utilize him. While Will Cauley-Stein at 55, he also should see his minutes rise with Bagley out, and it's a massively positive matchup. So I like Cauley-Stein at 5,500. Zubats at 48, and probably not going to look too closely at Ivica. On DraftKings, Gilesy at 3,100. That's really, really solid. You have to use him, I think. Cauley Stein, I like. Bogdanovic and Fox. All these guys are cash and tournament guys. Barnesy as well at 5,100's got some value over on DraftKings. Heald at 68 looks good. Harrell at 64 also pretty strong. So some decent value in that game and a real stackable game at this point. The last game of the night is the Bucks and the Lakers in LA. The Bucks are 4.5 point favorites. The total 236.5. We don't know if Antetokounmpo is going to be limited again. I would imagine that he will be. George Hill and Sterling Brown have been ruled out, and I would also imagine that Luke Walton goes back to that starting lineup of Rajon Rondo. We know that Lonzo Ball is out and Lance Stevenson is out for LA. So Rondo's at 5,500, a significant price rise on FanDuel, but he had 47 in 37 minutes last game. I'm not trusting him in cash, but I think he's a good tournament guy. While Bledsoe at 7,200, I love this matchup for Bledsoe if he's got to go up against Rondo. It's a big opportunity for him, like him for cash and tournaments. At shooting guard, Brogo's at 6,400. Rock solid for cash. Not sure about the tournament upside, but like him for cash. While Reggie Bullock is the opposite, more for tournaments than any cash value. And Middleton at 72. I feel really good about him in both formats. Caldwell Pope, Josh Hart, Connaughton, no interest. At small forward, LeBron James. He's all the way up to 12,400 because he's giving us 60 a night. So I like him in cash and in tournaments. We feel pretty confident about the floor value of LeBron at the moment, whereas Yanni at 11,000, that's a big salary drop of 1,100 because of last game. I think we have to look at him just as a tournament guy because I do believe his minutes will be limited. And in that case, that means Nikola Mirotic at 5,800 is a GPP option, while Brandon Ingram also putting up huge numbers, 40 a night at the moment. No reason to completely go away from him. I actually think there's some cash value in Ingram here. The future MVP, Kyle Kuzma at 7,000, has a massive record against the Bucks, averaging 47 against them in the 2 matches against them he's played. He's at 7,000. He's an interesting tournament player here. And then at center, Brook Lopez against his former team. He's just giving us 30 a night consistently. 6,200, love it, and it's a huge positive matchup. While guys like McGee and Muscala and Tyson Chandler, I don't really see how we can use them in DFS. On DraftKings, Rondo and Lopez look pretty good. I like Middleton, LeBron, of course, at 11.4, and Brogdon has a bit more value at that 5,600 mark over on DraftKings. Let's have a look at some studs and values. On DraftKings, I'm going with Irving as a stud and a value as Harry Giles. On FanDuel, it's Fox as my stud, and my value is Cauley Stein. On Yahoo, my stud is Irving, and my value play is minimum salary Harry Giles. And on DraftStars, it's Irving as my stud, and my value play as Jarrett Allen. That'll wrap it up for another day and another week of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast. Make sure you guys are checking out the rest of the podcasts across the network, and tell your smart device in your car to play your favorite episode. Just say play Locked On and insert your team name there, and you'll get that while you're stuck in traffic. Make sure you are checking out the artist who provided the music at the start. His name is Kuka, and you can see the links in the podcast show notes or in the YouTube description. Go and support him and listen to some of his music. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Damian Lillard.